Hi, today we are in San Francisco with Crittercism. Andrew, who are you and what do you do?
So I'm the co-founder of the company. I lead strategy and basically handle all outward-facing activities and also work with the team on product strategy and roadmap.
Cool. How did you come up with that business idea?
Basically, I have an engineering background. A long time ago was doing data warehousing at HP, so big data type engineering work. I left there when I got into Y Combinator, a startup incubator based out here in the Valley for a different company. Mm-hmm. And there we were working on a project. It's a data pipeline that analyzed tweets to be able to target advertising. Okay. Weren't quite passionate about the ad tech space, and so we ended up shutting down that company. That was kind of my first startup after college that I was working on. But I met up with a coworker at HP, and we started building mobile apps together. And our apps, they had a bunch of performance problems. We had 1-star reviews. We had people complaining, and we just found it was very difficult to get a handle on what that end user experience was like. Mm-hmm. And so we ended up building some tools to help ourselves, and we spoke at a bunch of mobile meetups and realized that this was a widespread problem. The App Store reviews themselves are not that actionable. You look at, I'm sure you've read them before, and they'll say, this app sucks, it's not working. Okay, it doesn't help me recreate the problem. And even if you could get in touch with a consumer, they just aren't knowledgeable enough to help you understand and recreate exactly what happened, what happened under the hood. So that's what led to the company being formed. It was our own problems, scratching your own itch is the phrase. And that was back, so we were building apps back in 2010, and we ended up incorporating this company in January of 2011. So we're actually coming up on our 5-year anniversary now.
Did you have some kind of initial customers before you incorporated the company, and this made you seem that there might be some business potential, or did you first incorporate and then looking for customers?
It's a great question because after Y Combinator, we got a little bit of money from there, but we were bootstrapping, and my fiance at the time was buying groceries, which was great. She's being very supportive. But we wanted to make sure that the next company that I built was that there was something there, that there was a real problem, that hair on fire problem that needed to be solved. And so after we were building those mobile apps, we almost didn't start this company, but we felt like there was something there. And so what we did was we set up a sign up list, like a beta list, put up a landing page. Yeah. And that was just a way for us to gauge demand. And in addition to that, we did get our software out in the hands of a few startups, a few other developers that we knew in the community, and we just saw that there was enough demand where we actually took that and applied to a different incubator called AngelPad, which was founded by a bunch of ex-Googlers. They're now based in New York. And we got into that program. And so we had the social proof, the social validation through that. Plus we had that sign-up list of potential clients, and so we said, we have to do this. We're onto something.
Let's talk about the business model of Crittercism. What is actually the value proposition that you're delivering to your customers?
Yeah, so it's actually fairly straightforward, which I think if you're going to work on something, can you explain it to your grandma? That's kind of a test, right? And basically everyone's used a mobile app that hasn't worked correctly. Maybe it was slow, it was laggy, maybe you try to buy something and it didn't work. And so what Crittercism does is it tracks that customer journey while they're using a mobile app. It sees where you struggle, and we collect diagnostic data under the hood to help companies find and fix those issues that customers are running into. I guess a bit of a deeper explanation, what we do is really provide actionable intelligence by taking operational and behavioral data. So behavioral data is what buttons the user is tapping on, what screens they're on. And then the operational data that we overlay on top of it is code defects, things like crashes and errors, networking issues, not only carrier performance, but we track all the cloud services and APIs that a mobile app is interacting with. And we tie it back, of course, with code defects because they can be related. And we look at important transactions or workflows in the app. So if you're trying to log in or update your profile or checkout, we take that and we track all these critical events and help you understand, if it's taking too long to complete an action, and if there was some failure that occurred along the way.
When you're talking about user behavioral tracking, is it that the company or your customer is actually defining the workflow, or is it like generic, like maybe Google Analytics, that you just add the Crittercism snippet and that's it?
It's similar to Google Analytics. So we have an SDK, a piece of software that you embed into an app, and we actually automate a lot of these events that we collect and a lot of the performance issues that a customer may run into. We do have optional, logging so you can send us additional data, and we also let you define what those important workflows are. So, our clients know better than us, where does login start and end, so they can define that, and then we automatically will track all these critical events, user behavior, and operational data along the way.
And are you having an API so that your customer has access to all the behavioral data as well?
Yes, so we have an API for all of our data, and our, some of our best clients will hook us up into their operations centers, into their product managers will have real-time view, especially around releases. Their developer team would have a separate dashboard seeing, what the code defects look like and how well they're doing.
Are there any specific customer segments that you are having, or is it just everybody who has a mobile app?
So we operate across verticals, across industries. We operate at a tremendous scale. We process over 100 billion application launches every month. And this is across 3 of the top 5 global media companies, 2 of the top 3 hotel chains in the world, 2 of the top 3 credit card processors. And so it's not any single vertical. We do have major presence in retail. Basically I'd say anyone that's building a mission critical or revenue critical mobile application falls under our purview. And it's in a variety of use cases. So it's not necessarily just, everyone thinks of the consumer apps that you download in the App Store, and that is the majority of our business. But a lot of companies are also publishing internal mobile applications to their employees to improve a business process. So an example would be, we have a very large retailer who has deployed apps to their employees in their warehouses so they can track inventory. There's another one that we work with that, you've seen, of course, point of sale devices being done through smartphones and tablets, but they actually even will do something like take a smartphone and hook it up to a printer and reprint price tags when people return items to the store. So we're seeing more and more that all these business processes are being moved onto smartphones and tablets because of the efficiency gains that they get from it.
How's your revenue model working?
So we charge based on how many users an app has, specifically monthly active users. So we only charge if you install it and never use the app, we don't charge the company that's supporting the app for that user. But it makes sense because we collect more data the more customers that user or that client ends up having.
And how did you define the price point, or is it really like customer specific?
It took us a while to get to something that worked because there wasn't a great analogy in the beginning. It wasn't like we could look at what was happening on the web world, because mobile is just this different beast, and so we just experimented and over time found a price point that worked.
Okay, cool. Are there any options to extending this kind of model? Because if you are first on the mobile and you have all the behavioral data, so to speak, where you can identify whether an app crashed or some system information, etc., which you are currently doing, are there any other kind of applications you can build on top of that, or actually are already doing?
Sure. You're right. We collect a lot of rich data. In fact, we've started to publish some of these in the forms of reports. The health of the industry, how's iOS versus Android doing? In fact, if you go to data.crittercism.com, Crittercism.com. We have some live benchmarks there. So we'll continue to invest in the data intelligence aspect of it. But we have our customers using us in a variety of ways that we didn't even imagine when we first built the company. At the end of the day, it's all about customer experience, and companies want to make sure that no matter what channel that their users are going through to access their service, that they have that amazing experience. And of course, if there's revenue involved, to make sure that everything goes smoothly. So an example of that would be, obviously around connected devices and IoT. We're in some major watch applications, as an example. We've just seen Apple revamp its TV offering. And so these are platforms that we actually we've started to work on, and we plan to support all of them, because they're actually they look and feel and smell very similar to smartphone and tablets, in that really you're dealing with embedded software. And the important thing to keep in mind is that when you're working on embedded software, customer experience is very tightly coupled with performance, because everything is kind of combined into one. You don't have that client-server separation of the web, and companies just struggle to keep up because the ecosystem is moving so quickly. There's not enough engineering talent out there, so they can't even hire fast enough. And they've caught up somewhat on the mobile, on the traditional mobile side, but now you even have this explosion of brand new devices coming out, and it's another challenge, and our software helps them tackle those challenges so that their customers are successful.
You're covering more than 100 billion app loads a month. Can you give us some insights on the main reasons why an app is crashing?
Sure, and when you say crash, people use that term to mean a variety of things, right? Because when you look at an app crashing, you could just close. But what happens if you try to buy something and it's sitting there and spinning, and you say screw that and you hit the home button?
Yeah.
Some people might call that a crash, even though technically there's a different word for it. When it comes down to it, it's you look at the differences. It's actually related to why mobile's different. If you answer that question, you can answer on what causes apps to fail the most. And when you look at it, you look at all the devices out there. You've heard a lot about device fragmentation, thousands and thousands of Android devices. Even on iOS, you see they have a lot more devices than they used to. You see a lot of operating system pushes. So we just had iOS 9. Marshmallow is having a rollout right now, and each new OS release can cause problems. Each new device that comes out, you have carriers, and a lot of people think carriers are dumb pipes, but they actually can mess with the data. They can do packet shaping. We've seen one that changed JPEGs to PNGs, as an example. You have geopolitical issues like the firewall in China. You have the major countries just shutting down internet access during conflicts. These are all things you just didn't even have to imagine, in the previous world. And of course, the sensors and whatnot that are available to these devices are new. And so when you add it all up, it's impossible to test every possible use case. And even if you could, that new Samsung device comes out and suddenly things start breaking again. And so that having that visibility it's a vague answer, but that's the number one reason why applications fail. It's just there are peculiarities, whether it's the device, the OS, the location, that cause some event to occur or some code to be executed that you just didn't test for. And that's what ends up causing a lot of headaches, especially for companies that don't have that aren't using our software.
Are you aware of the Safe Harbor Act? Because I think some weeks ago or so it was refused or something.
Last week, the European High Court nullified it.
And your company is based in the US. Do you see any impact of the Safe Harbor on your business?
So Europe's been important for us from day one. In fact, our first paying customer was in Europe, which a lot of people don't know. So with that, even though we're a 60-person company, we actually we have a European data center.
Okay.
So we leverage Amazon's Frankfurt instance, and that has data isolation, so the data does not leave the EU. In fact, I don't think it leaves Germany. It's based there. And so we are safe harbor, or we were safe harbor certified before the European court did that annulment. But and by the way, we're paying close attention because they are going to give new guidelines to U.S. companies, kind of like a safe harbor 2.0.
Okay.
But data privacy and security it's always been important to us. It's always been a question that's been raised, especially because we're embedded in people's apps. And so by default, we don't collect any personally identifiable information. In fact, we've turned a lot of capabilities off by default in our SDK, and companies can choose to turn things on depending on if they're comfortable with it or not. You have to deal with mobile apps can be used by children, especially children under 13, and there's laws against collecting data there. So we've made sure to be compliant across the spectrum in the U.S., overseas as well. So I think other companies that maybe don't have that European data center are probably pretty worried because, when they go and sell into a company in Europe, that was one of the certifications that they would show to make them, feel more trusted and feel better about using their product. But for us, we have that capability available, and so there's less of an impact to us.
Just for checking whether I got it right, in the US, you are not allowed to track the behavior of people of 13 years and below?
There's specific rules. It's called Coppa Compliance. There's specific rules around collecting anything that might be construed as personally identifiable. Now, we don't collect that by default anyway. But there's kind of a gray area in terms of what you consider personally identifiable, and so we've just made sure that we've architected ourselves both, in terms of our product, but also just our legal documents that we handle. Handle that.
Cool, Andrew. What type of advice could you give first-time entrepreneurs who just come to you and say, "Hey, Andrew, I want to start a company, but I'm not sure what to do, how to do it correctly"?
Sure. Well, there's many ways, there's many pieces of advice I could give. I'd say, for one thing, when we were trying to start a company before, I think we were going about it in the wrong way. We're kind of sitting in a room brainstorming about, hey, what should we work on? And when it came down to it, we were the most successful when we were leaning on our own experiences. What pains did we encounter? What inefficiencies did we see? And so, it's hard to start a company when you're not intimately familiar or don't have domain knowledge. So if you're, if you're a software developer and you want to create software for medical profession, but you don't have any medical background, it's tough, right? You need to find a co-founder that could fill that slot for you. But beyond that, I think one thing that helped was, as we started the company, one of the mantras that you hear quite frequently is fail fast. And even after we started this company, we had, for example, when we started, we had what we thought was one product line, but it was actually two, and we ended up quickly deprecating and getting rid of one of them because it wasn't growing as quickly. We wanted to really focus our time. So I think it was important that we did that. And over time, we've continued to make sure we stay focused and get rid of projects that aren't our core. So another piece of advice that I'd give is that you're very scrappy in the beginning. You don't have a lot of money, and it really forces you to make decisions in the right way and to move quickly. And so another piece of advice I'd give is that as you raise money from investors and you start to grow the company, is that you keep that mentality. If you do raise some money, don't overspend. Make sure you validate your sales model. Don't go out and hire 100 salespeople before you've done that. It's, I guess the analogy might be, some people say, if you build it, they will come. But what you should do is build it, let some clients come, and then build a little bit more. Don't spend, don't put your head in the sand and build something for a year and hope that you'll be successful. You need to quickly iterate, and that's not just in software development, but that's also on your business model and go-to-market plans.
Cool. Andrew, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks.
It was very nice and interesting.
Nice meeting you.
And if you have an app and you want to really understand why it fails or where you can improve it on your workflow, maybe you can just install and buy Crittercism. Thank you.
Thanks.
Great.